The primitive world. In the grand archives of the Galactic Accord, Earth barely warranted a footnote. The galaxy was ancient, vast beyond comprehension, and filled with civilizations whose histories stretched back hundreds of thousands of years. Empires had risen and collapsed before Earth's first forests had taken root. Entire species had ascended beyond physical form, while the ancestors of humanity still clung to survival in ice and dust. So when long-range survey arrays detected artificial signals emerging from a quiet yellow star in an unremarkable spiral arm, the discovery drew little attention. At first, the system was designated Sol 3, its dominant life form. Carbon-based, oxygen-breathing bipeds. Technological status, newly spacefaring. Primitive. That was the consensus. The Teliari observers noted the species' volatile political divisions and rapid technological leaps without philosophical maturity. The Koth Dominion dismissed them as another brief evolutionary flare, destined to burn brightly and collapse under its own instability. The Seraph Collective archived the discovery under developing consciousness, non-immediate relevance. Earth was categorized as emergent civilization, observation only, no diplomatic outreach, no interference, no concern. The galaxy had seen countless such species before, and yet something about humanity did not align. The first inconsistency appeared in their ships. Human vessels were not elegant. They lacked the organic efficiency of Teliari craft or the seamless energy harmonics of Seraph constructs. Their hulls were angular, layered with visible reinforcement and redundant systems. Instead of graceful adaptation to cosmic norms, they appeared engineered for survival under catastrophic conditions. They were built like machines, expecting war, or disaster, or environments far harsher than the peaceful void most civilizations had learned to inhabit. Their reactors ran hotter than safety models recommended. Their life support systems contained backup loops nested within backup loops. Their navigation systems accounted for stellar anomalies long considered irrelevant by the Accord. It was excessive. More puzzling still was their rate of progress. Humanity had leapt from atmospheric flight to faster-than-light capability in what amounted to a blink on the galactic timescale. Their technology lacked refinement, yet it displayed flashes of startling sophistication, as if certain breakthroughs came not from gradual discovery, but from intuition or memory. Still, the Accord maintained its stance. Young species were often erratic. Curiosity, however, was unavoidable. A quiet survey flotilla was dispatched to observe from a distance. No contact, no interference, just confirmation. The flotilla scans returned volumes of expected data, oceans rich with life, continents scarred by development, orbital infrastructure still inefficient by galactic standards. But when they turned their instruments toward Sol's moon, everything changed. Luna appeared lifeless at first glance, a barren satellite, pitted with ancient impacts and coated in dust accumulated over billions of years. Routine, until subsurface scans began mapping beneath the regolith. What they found was impossible. The readings revealed geometric formations buried kilometers below the surface, perfectly symmetrical, composed of materials that did not occur naturally. Vast corridors, vaulted chambers, structural lattices extending deeper than any known excavation could reach. Artificial and ancient. The Teliari lead analyst ran the scans again and again. Each time the results remained the same. The structure predated the moon's current surface topology. It had been there before the most recent bombardment cycles, before the last major geological shifts, before any known civilization in the Accord had achieved spaceflight. Older than the Teliari, older than the Koth, older than the oldest recorded star charts. The immediate assumption was seeding. The galaxy bore countless examples of ancient precursor races leaving behind silent monuments on habitable worlds. Earth, it seemed, had simply been one of many. Yet something did not fit. Seed structures were usually crude, biological catalysts, atmospheric regulators, evolutionary nudges. This was not that. This was architecture. Purposeful. Monumental. A vault. Energy signatures were almost non-existent, suggesting dormancy rather than decay, which meant it might still be intact. The flotilla's commanders faced a dilemma. Official protocol forbade interference with emerging civilizations. Excavation would violate Accord law. But this was no ordinary discovery. A covert probe was deployed. It drilled silently through the lunar crust, descending into the heart of the anomaly. The moment it breached the outer shell, the probe's sensors flooded with data. The walls were composed of an alloy unknown to galactic metallurgy, self-repairing at the molecular level, resistant to radiation, erosion, and time itself. Inside, the structure extended far beyond initial estimates. And it was not empty. Engravings lined the interior surfaces, repeating patterns etched with precision beyond contemporary fabrication methods. Language, if it could be called that. No Accord lexicon matched it. No known precursor script aligned. Translation algorithms struggled, failing again and again to parse the symbols into meaning. Until one pattern emerged, a single recurring glyph. Simple, deliberate, everywhere. The probe transmitted high-resolution imagery back to the flotilla. Linguistic AIs processed the data in silence. Then slowly, a tentative interpretation formed. Not exact, but close enough. The symbol appeared to represent a concept. Not ownership, not warning, not divinity, but something older, something foundational. After hours of computation, the translation stabilized. The meaning was unmistakable. One word, repeated across every chamber, every corridor, every sealed gateway. A word that carried weight beyond time. The analysts stared at the result in stunned silence. Because the symbol did not translate to colony, or outpost, or seed. It translated to home, the buried age. The discovery beneath Luna did not become public knowledge. It did not even reach the full council of the Galactic Accord. Instead, it was sealed within the innermost intelligence chambers, shared only among the oldest civilizations whose authority shaped the Accord's direction. What had been categorized as a routine observation of a primitive species had become something far more significant. Earth was no longer just another young world. It was now a question, and the question was dangerous. The structure beneath the lunar surface was too old to belong to any known precursor race. The Accord's historical record stretched back nearly 1,000,000 years, with fragments of civilizations even older preserved in myth and fossilized ruin. But this vault existed outside history. Radiometric analysis suggested its construction dated back before the earliest interstellar migrations of the Tellari, before the Koth Dominion had united its first planetary systems, before the Seraph Collective had transitioned from biological existence to energy-based continuity. In simple terms, it was older than the current galactic order, and yet it orbited Earth. The Accord's Inner Council reached an uneasy consensus. The structure must be studied, but without alerting humanity. Excavation would violate the Accord's non-interference laws. So they did not excavate. Instead, they observed and listened. The probe that had first breached the vault's outer shell remained inside, transmitting streams of data back to the hidden research fleet stationed beyond the system's outer debris fields. What it revealed was not ruin. It was preservation. The corridors were pristine. The alloy walls showed no corrosion, no degradation, no structural fatigue. Even after eons, the vault appeared untouched by time. It was not abandoned. It was waiting. Further exploration uncovered chambers filled not with machinery, but with records. Vast arrays of crystalline data matrices arranged in precise geometric patterns. Libraries, archives, and something else. Maps. At first, the star charts appeared familiar. They depicted spiral arms, nebulae, and stellar clusters recognizable to modern navigation systems. But subtle differences emerged. Certain stars were missing. Others were present where none existed today. Entire constellations were shifted. Pulsars known to have burned out millions of years ago were shown in active states. Galactic structures that had long since drifted apart were depicted as intact. The charts were not predictions. They were historical records. They showed a galaxy that no longer existed. The realization sent ripples through the Accord's analysts. Whoever built this vault had mapped the stars when the galaxy itself was younger, long before any known civilization had achieved interstellar travel. And yet, the deeper the probe traveled, the more unsettling the truth became. It found a central chamber. Unlike the others, this one pulsed faintly with dormant energy. At its heart stood a single monolithic construct, smooth, dark, and covered in the same repeating symbol found throughout the vault. The one translated as home. When the probe approached, something happened. For the first time in untold ages, the vault responded. Energy flickered across the chamber surfaces. Systems stirred from dormancy. Light traced pathways along the walls, as if awakening from a deep and dreamless sleep. A signal emerged. Not a defense, not a warning. A message, encoded in the same ancient script. The Accord's linguistic engines struggled to interpret it. The syntax was alien, the structure unlike any known communication model. But slowly, meaning formed. It was not addressed to outsiders. It was not meant for discovery by strangers. It was meant for those who would return. The message spoke of a civilization older than memory, a species that had spread across the stars not through conquest, but through stewardship. They had guided the formation of habitable worlds, shielded emerging life from extinction events, and cultivated ecosystems across countless systems. They had seen themselves not as rulers, but as caretakers. Over time, they had mastered every challenge the universe could offer. They conquered disease, defeated entropy within their own forms, extended life beyond natural limits, even learned to shape stars. And yet, their greatest achievement became their greatest burden. They endured, while everything else faded. Empires rose and fell. Species flourished and vanished. Galaxies shifted, and they remained. Immortal, unchanging, alone. The message described their final decision. Not to ascend further, not to retreat into isolation, but to begin again. They would abandon immortality, erase their accumulated knowledge, scatter their legacy into machines that would wait beyond time, and return to mortality, to growth, to uncertainty. They would forget, by choice. Their civilization would end, so their species could live again, and they would begin that life on a single world, a world chosen for its balance, its resilience, its capacity for renewal. The final lines of the message were the most chilling. They did not name the species. They did not describe their form. They offered only a destination, a reference point, the origin of their new beginning. The Accord's analysts cross-referenced the coordinates. Again and again. Each time, the result remained the same. The world chosen for rebirth was Earth. Silence filled the research fleet, because the implication was undeniable. Earth had not been seeded by an ancient race. It had been chosen by one, and humanity was not the galaxy's newest child. They were the last echo of its oldest ancestors. They simply did not remember. The awakening. For years, the truth remained buried beneath silence. The Galactic Accord chose restraint, not out of respect for law, but out of fear. If humanity truly was the reborn form of the galaxy's oldest civilization, then awakening that passed too soon could reshape the balance of power across known space. The younger races might see humanity not as equals, but as rightful rulers. Old alliances could fracture. Entire civilizations might bend in submission to a legacy that humanity itself did not yet understand. So the Accord watched and waited. But history has a way of resurfacing, especially when it is waiting to be found. Humanity's expansion beyond their home system came not with elegance, but with determination. Their first extrasolar colonies were established with the same relentless redundancy that defined their ships. Harsh worlds that other species would have terraformed over centuries were settled in decades. Asteroid belts became industrial hubs. Frozen moons turned into research outposts. They did not expand like newcomers. They expanded like survivors. And wherever they went, something stirred. It began on Mars. A routine subsurface scan, conducted during the construction of a new thermal reactor network, detected an anomaly deep beneath the planet's crust. The formation was symmetrical, far too precise to be natural. Human engineers assumed it was an error, until excavation drones uncovered a smooth metallic surface that resisted every cutting tool available. Within weeks, a research team breached the structure. Inside, they found corridors, silent, unlit, waiting. No alien language greeted them. No warning. No defense systems activated. Instead, the moment the first humans stepped inside, the structure awoke. Lights flowed across the walls like liquid starlight. Systems dormant for millions of years came alive. Doors opened with quiet certainty, as if they had never been meant to resist these visitors. The Accord's hidden observers detected the activation immediately, and panic followed, because the structure beneath Mars matched the design of the lunar vault, and it was responding not to intrusion, but to presence, human presence. Within months, similar discoveries followed. Beneath Earth's deepest ocean trenches, ancient constructs activated as exploration submarines passed overhead. On the far side of Luna, previously inert systems stirred when human colonies expanded into new sectors. Across the solar system, dormant machines began to awaken. They were not reacting to technology. They were reacting to biology. The vaults were recognizing their creators. Humanity. At first, the discoveries were treated as isolated anomalies, then as artifacts of an unknown precursor race. But the deeper human scientists explored, the more unsettling the truth became. These machines were not foreign. Their logic systems mirrored human neural structures. Their interface patterns aligned with instinctive human cognition. Devices that should have taken centuries to understand were mastered within years, sometimes within days. It felt less like learning and more like remembering. The first undeniable revelation came from a data archive discovered beneath Europa's ice. Unlike the earlier vaults, this one contained active records, vast crystalline memory matrices that responded to human touch, not with language, but with images, visions of ancient star roads spanning across the galaxy, worlds shaped and stabilized by unseen hands, species guided through extinction events by silent protectors. And among those protectors, figures, tall, familiar, human, not identical in form, but unmistakably related. These were not gods, not aliens. They were ancestors. The records revealed a civilization that had once stood alone at the peak of galactic development, a species that had built networks between stars long before any other life form developed spaceflight. They did not conquer. They nurtured. They seeded ecosystems, stabilized climates, shielded emerging worlds from cosmic disasters. They were the quiet architects of life across the galaxy. And then they vanished, not through war, not through collapse, but through choice. The final archive explained why. They had grown weary of eternity. Mastery had become monotony. Immortality had stripped existence of urgency. Without challenge, without growth, life had lost its meaning. So they made the most radical decision in galactic history. They would end their own perfection. Their knowledge would be sealed away. Their bodies returned to mortality. Their memories erased. They would become a young species once more, to struggle again, to rediscover wonder, to earn their place among the stars, not through inheritance, but through effort. And they chose one world for this rebirth, Earth. The revelation spread slowly through human institutions, at first dismissed as misinterpretation, then debated, then verified, and finally accepted. Humanity was not an accident of evolution. They were the rebirth of the galaxy's first caretakers. The Accord watched in silence as the truth emerged. They expected arrogance, dominance, a sudden shift in humanity's ambitions. But none came. Instead, humanity continued their expansion exactly as before. Curious, resilient, collaborative. They did not activate the dormant fleets hidden beneath ancient vaults. They did not demand authority. They did not claim ownership of the galaxy they had once shaped. They simply learned and remembered. The elders had returned, but they had returned as something new. Not rulers, not guardians, but participants in a shared future. And for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy's oldest civilization was no longer alone at the top, because this time, they had grown alongside everyone else, the elders among the young. The truth did not shatter the galaxy. It unsettled it. When humanity confirmed what the ancient vaults revealed, that they were not the galaxy's newest species, but its oldest reborn, panic did not erupt across the stars. Instead, silence spread, because every civilization of the Galactic Accord reached the same conclusion at once. The species they had dismissed as primitive had once been their guardians. The revelation traveled slowly at first, confined to diplomatic back channels and classified transmissions. The Accord's leaders debated whether to acknowledge it publicly or suppress it indefinitely. But the vaults continued to awaken, and the galaxy could see. Ancient constructs beyond Sol began responding to human vessels passing through deep space trade routes. Silent beacons that had remained inert for millions of years flickered back to life when human explorers approached. Ruins that had never reacted to any other species opened quietly in their presence. The pattern was undeniable. Humanity was not claiming the legacy. The legacy was claiming them. Faced with mounting evidence, the Accord made the truth public. The announcement was simple, and it changed everything. Humanity had once been the first great civilization. They had guided life across the stars, and they had chosen to begin again. Reactions varied. Some species responded with reverence. The younger civilizations, whose evolutionary histories had clearly benefited from ancient intervention, regarded humanity with awe. Others felt unease. The Koth Dominion questioned whether humanity's rediscovered technology would inevitably lead to dominance. The Teliari worried that ancient authority might undermine the delicate equality the Accord had fought to establish. Even the Seraph Collective, who had long transcended biological limitations, found themselves uncertain in the presence of a species that had willingly abandoned perfection. But all waited for the same thing: humanity's next move. Because history suggested a simple outcome. The elders had returned, and elders ruled. Yet nothing changed. Human trade ships continued their routes. Human colonies focused on sustainability rather than expansion. Their military forces remained defensive, their ancient war vaults untouched. Weeks passed, then months. Finally, the Accord summoned a formal assembly. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was invited not as an emerging civilization, but as a peer among the eldest powers. The meeting took place in neutral space, a massive orbital forum designed for species of vastly different forms and environments. Delegates gathered from every corner of known space. The atmosphere was tense, because everyone expected the same declaration: a claim, a demand, a quiet return to leadership. Instead, the human representative arrived without ceremony. No grand fleet, no ancient technology, only a small diplomatic vessel. When asked directly whether humanity intended to reclaim its former role, the representative's response was calm, measured, and profoundly unexpected. "We are not what we were." The chamber fell silent. The representative continued. "Our ancestors reached a point where growth became impossible. They chose to begin again because they understood something we are only now rediscovering." A pause followed. Then, meaning does not come from mastery. It comes from journey. The Accord pressed further. Would humanity activate the ancient networks now responding to them? Would they restore the old systems of stewardship? Would they assume responsibility for guiding younger civilizations once more? The answer remained unchanged. No. Humanity had chosen mortality once, and they would honor that choice. They would not rule. They would not command. They would not reshape the galaxy according to ancient design. They would grow alongside it, as equals. The statement rippled through the assembly. It was not submission, nor was it retreat. It was something entirely new. The elders had returned and declined their throne. In the cycles that followed, the impact of that decision became clear. Humanity shared what knowledge they rediscovered, but cautiously, ensuring it enhanced cooperation rather than dependency. They participated in Accord initiatives not as overseers, but as collaborators. They explored not to reclaim, but to learn. The ancient vaults continued to awaken across the galaxy, but humanity chose not to open many of them. Some legacies, they decided, belonged to the past. The younger species began to see humanity not as rulers reborn, but as proof that even the greatest civilizations could choose humility. And in that choice, earn greater respect than conquest ever could. The galaxy had feared the return of its first masters. Instead, it welcomed new partners. Humanity had once shaped the stars. Now, they would walk among them, not above. And in doing so, they proved something their ancient selves had never fully understood. True greatness was not in ruling forever. It was in knowing when not to.